Do biographies interest you? Are you Reformed? Are you into history? Do you like theologians whose last names start with the letter B? Let's see, there's Berkhoff and Bavinck and Bonhoeffer and Boston and Bullinger and Bucer and Bonaventura and Burroughs. Then do I have the one for you? No, not like that. But I do have a great book you should read. Talking about this right here, Bavinck, A Critical Biography by James Eglinton. James Eglinton is a theologian, professor at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and a Bavinck scholar, quite obviously, as he wrote a big biography on Bavinck. He also did his PhD on Herman Bavinck and has supervised numerous other PhD students studying Bavinck, and so he's definitely someone who can write on Bavinck. And first of all, this is a wonderfully written book. The writing style is great. Eglinton beautifully weaves together the story of Bavinck's life and the history of the Netherlands at the time. It makes very wonderful reading. He makes Bavinck very human. He digs into Bavinck's journals and other things that he wrote, letters that he wrote, and makes him like you and I in many ways, a human being with thoughts and emotions and feelings, and someone who's expressing those. And so it's just a wonderfully told story of Herman Bavinck's life, of his accomplishments, of what he did, what he was interested in. And if you're at all interested in the development of modern Reformed theology, this is a book you certainly should read. There's a couple things that really stood out to me, struck me on this book and in this book, and I want to comment on those just for a few minutes in this book bite. The first of all is really Eglinton's thesis in this book, and that is that to understand Bavinck properly, we need to understand Bavinck as Orthodox and yet modern. That is, that he's committed to Orthodox, Reformed, confessional theology, and yet he's living in the modern era, late 1800s, or mid to late 1800s. He was born 1854, died 1921. So he's in that era, and he's really engaging and wrestling with the ideas and philosophy and theology of that time. Bavinck was part of the Seceder tradition in the Netherlands. I won't go into that because you should read the book. But in short, this was a group that in 1834 broke away from the state church in the Netherlands and started their own group of churches. Bavinck's father, Jan Bavinck, was involved in the original breaking away of the Seceder tradition, and it's a tradition that Bavinck stayed in for his entire life, committed to classic Reformed theology, committed to the confessions of the Dutch Reformed churches. And so Eglinton presents him as very much in that stream, and yet he was modern. He pursued and wanted to pursue a scientific, we would say academic, scholarly stream of training. And so he went to Leiden, which was a hotbed for theological liberalism in the Netherlands, but also the place where he could really dig into this scholastic or scholarly approach to theology. And then throughout his career, he was constantly reading and interacting at a very high level with liberal theologians, with the various philosophers of his time, with the psychology of his time that was coming out. He's writing and interacting in all these different areas. He's really a high-level polyglot, interested and ably reading, understanding, writing about many different thoughts and ideas of his time. So he's Orthodox, and yet he's modern. Tied to this, as Eglinton writes this book, the second thing that really struck me was his explanation of the history and of the culture of the time. He really places Bavinck within his setting in really a remarkable way. Said a moment ago, Herman Bavinck's born 1854. He dies 1921. And what Eglinton does is write about how the church history and world history are shaping who Bavinck is and how he thinks. The secession, this breaking away of a group of churches from the Dutch state church happened only 20 years before Bavinck was born. And so this group of churches is really trying to find its way, particularly in terms of how they train pastors, and struggling to do so. And so that leads Bavinck from their theological college in Kampen to Leiden, where he can get a more scholarly academic education in terms of theology. But Eglinton also writes about what's known as the Spring of Nations. And that's this series of revolutions that took place in Europe, in which these countries moved from monarchies or older systems of government to modern liberal democracies, what we would recognize as countries with parliaments, with prime ministers, presidents, etc., etc. And so Bavinck's living is born a few years after all these revolutions take place, and so the way politics is done and societies function was very much changing as Bavinck was growing up and seeking to understand these things. And Eglinton just does a beautiful picture of showing how these things are affecting Bavinck, how he's really living in this time of seismic change. And so you have to read the book to find out what Eglinton says. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but that's an interesting thing to note as you do read this book. Lastly, we know Bavinck as the scholar. We know him for his 4-volume Reformed Dogmatics. We know him for his Stone Lectures at Princeton, published under the title of Philosophy of Revelation. We know him for his Reformed Ethics that has been produced over the last number of years in English. We know him as a very bright thinker, but he was also a churchman, a very passionate churchman. He pastored a church in Friesland, one of the Dutch provinces, for about a year. And it didn't work out for him, and he pursued his academic career. But even then, being close friends with Abraham Kuyper, Bavinck really sought to unite his seceder churches with the Doliante, a group that Kuyper later led out of the Dutch state church. And eventually their success as these two churches joined together. Bavinck was very passionate about the unity of the church and about joining these churches together, which I think just demonstrates his heart, that he's not just seeking to do abstract theology, but he's really seeking the good of the church and to do theology for the church. Eglinton also, as he writes of Bavinck, what I appreciate is that he writes a lot of really good things about Bavinck, but he doesn't make him this absolute saint who can do no wrong. He expresses his weaknesses like when he's involved in politics and trying to lead a political party, and that didn't really work out well. In the end, this is a book that gave me a lot to think about. I really enjoyed reading it, but just thinking about how do we apply that Orthodox yet modern paradigm to the church today, to Christianity now 150 years later. More than that, I can't think straight right now. 170 years later. How do we apply being Orthodox and modern today? What's the interaction of Christianity and, let's say, politics, or the academy and the church? I think Bavinck gives us a good place to think. Just as a person, he gives us a good place to think about how these things can be played out and to come together. So, if you're at all interested in this, if you're at all interested in history, in biography, in theology, I suggest you get a hold of and read Bavinck, A Critical Biography by James Eglinton. See you next time.